What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Zach Reacts. How are y'all doing today? So, no reaction video this time. This is just some thoughts I had, and I really wanted to actually try and get it out there because, Hell of a Boss. It's definitely gone a lot of places I didn't expect from the beginning, and the characters are not like anything I think I've seen in any other show I've watched. Not to mention just how unapologetically queer this show is. I love the art, I love the soundtrack, the visuals and the animation. Everything about it is just top notch. The one thing that I've noticed is about the fandom since its inception is this weird ass anti-fandom that's popped up around it. There are people that for months were endlessly clamoring for a new episode, demanding for Full Moon to drop after it was teased some months back, and after getting it, I've realized something. A lot of people really don't understand the Stolitz situation. Like, put simply, this is a show about demons battling their own energy, and we've seen to some degree, everybody has some level of trauma. And with all the characters, to some degree, we understand where they're coming from because we know what they've went through, right? That said, the one thing I've noticed is that people are willing to give almost every other character grace and empathy that they need, except for Blitz. I was listening to the podcast, Not Just Tentacles, a while back. I highly recommend it. Go subscribe. They talked about how the first official episode of the series kind of feels out of place, and it gave a lot of people the idea that Moxie was supposed to be the main character of the show, and that this was supposed to be like some Office type parody or something like that. And then as time went on and people started realizing that that wasn't the case, they were getting mad and saying that this wasn't the show they were promised, even though they weren't really promised anything. They were just promised there would be a show, and we got it. I feel like that's part of it, but also like it's partially because people play some like weird morality game when it comes to this show and how its characters are portrayed. Which honestly, I'm not even gonna go into that. I feel like anyway. But when it comes to Blitz itself, I feel like it really just comes down to a lot of people not wanting to sympathize with him to some degree, even though, again, he's the main character. Something I've noticed is like when it comes to people who are traumatized, or rather, in this case, characters who are traumatized or victims in some manner, that unless they're acting a certain way, a lot of people really don't want to give them the grace that they honestly should. It's the same reason that people try to use to argue against the basically existence and portrayal of Angel Dust in Hazbin Hotel, though I feel like there's also another reason for that I'll get into a little bit later because it kind of connects. But when someone's traumatized, it's like the only response that they think that people should have is that they basically are curled up in a ball and are helpless. They can't be combative, they can't be sarcastic, they can't be hypersexual. You have to essentially just be helpless. And I really hate that, especially because one, it's incredibly aimless, and two, a lot of people are really selective about how or who they're willing to give that kind of grace to. Moxie is combative and he's sarcastic, but no one really talks about that. Luna is incredibly combative, but people will either not talk about it or they'll use it as like some flaw against her. Stolas, he's doing one of the 4 Fs. Like, there's fight or flight, which everyone knows, but there's also freeze and fawn. Stolas fawns. He's been fawning for years. He's certainly not helpless, but his situation is very unique for him. But then when you go over to Blitz, he's all of these things. He's combative, he's sarcastic, he's hypersexual, he's the type of person that laughs when he's uncomfortable or tries to cover up his feelings with lampshading humor. In Oops, we find out the reason why Fizz is the way he is with the robotic limbs is because of an explosion that Blitz caused by accident, in which not only did Fizz get hurt, but his mom died, and Blitz has blamed himself for that ever since. He thinks that everyone that he ever loved hates him. Granted, you can blame a lot of this on Cash, but Blitz blames himself. And because of that, he doesn't see how anybody else could possibly love him. Like, he hates himself so much that the mere thought of anyone, especially Stolas, being in love with him just doesn't register or make sense to him. He's also got complicated feelings about Stolas because of a lot of things that he's said and done. Like, could he have taken Stolas seriously? Sure, he could have, but why would he, considering the type of person he is and everything that he's been through that's made him the person he is? But not only that, it really doesn't help considering the way that Stolas kind of set up the situation. Like, no hate to Stolas, I love the guy, but the way he handled this kind of proved what Blitz was saying. Think about this. At no point did Stolas ask Blitz what he wanted. Please point out where the phrase, "What would you like, Blitzy?" came out of Stolas' mouth, because I certainly don't remember. Like, when Blitz arrives, the first thing he does is ask for the book back permanently. His words. Then he presents the Asmodean crystal to him, tells him that he set up a deal with Ozzy so he'd be under his jurisdiction, and then he says that their deal is over and that he has no obligation to come see him again, but that he wants Blitz to. He doesn't even actually tell Blitz that he's in love with him. He kind of talks around it weirdly. And when he doesn't get the response that he wants, he just walks away from Blitz without hearing his perspective. He literally gives him a gift, ends their deal, and then because he gave him a gift, thinks that Blitz will just stay with him now. This is the kind of thing that Blitz is talking about in regards to royals not caring about the feelings of lower class demons because they're smaller and less important. Something that Stryker said a lot when he had captured Stolas. That just confirms his worst fears at that point. But even Blitz realizes he fucked up. You know that moment from the Owl House from the episode Knock Knock Knocking at Hootie's door where Luz and Amity are going down the tunnel of love together and Luz starts just destroying all the animatronics that are showing all the sappy things that she said about Amity. Amity getting out and thinking that she's being rejected, and Luz trying to cover it up saying it was Hootie's idea, and Amity just turns around saying, yeah, us dating? That's stupid, right? With a tear coming out of her eye, and Luz just looks like, oh no, I fucked up. That's the situation. That's this situation right here. Neither of these two are actually really good at communicating, especially with each other, and now all that not listening, all that bad communication, it comes to a head and it boils over. Many people see this and they're mad about it because it's not what they wanted, and look, in response to that, I'm just gonna throw Harry on a hook. A writing choice that you don't like isn't bad writing, okay? But also, like, the foundation of this was already shaky at best, and I think a lot of people don't seem to realize that these two were never really a couple in the first place. Like, I know it's gonna make some people mad or confuse some people, but they weren't. Think about the foundation of their relationship for a second. It started when they were kids, and Blitz's dad made him go on a play date with Stolas because he got paid $5 at a slim fit condom in order to steal a bunch of shit from them, which Blitz definitely never told Stolas about. Then 25 years later, those two meet again with Blitz trying to steal something from Stolas again, who still remembers his face all these years later and is smitten. Why? Because Blitz was Stolas' gay awakening. He knew as a kid, but was forced to marry Stella, forced into a life of combat, and having a child via SA. And what's the first thing Stolas thinks when he sees Blitz? That you're here to ravish me. That was his first impression, and he thinks Blitz is the one that was just all about sex. Like, Stolas is the kind of guy who definitely reads romance novels among the many books in his library, so I feel like it's not really off to say that that's definitely what he was going for or thought this was. But Blitz is really not too far off in the same direction. Like out of all the places that you choose to go to the house of the guy that you haven't seen since you were 8, who you still for some reason remember the address of. Even after he has Stolas tied to the bed, the line that brings him back is when Stolas calls him his first ever friend. Like, this clearly strikes a chord within Blitz because he doesn't think he has any friends. Again, he hates himself. And again, you go to the house of the guy who you have not seen in like 2.5 decades? Really? Like, I can hear the music singing in the background right now, and Blitz just does not want to say he's in love. Like, there's nothing forcing Blitz to stay. Like, Stolas is tied to a bed, he's blindfolded, he can't even hear Blitz's footsteps as he's walking away. Like, he could easily leave, but instead, he says he'll make this real fast. And then real fast turns into him staying the whole damn night. There's clearly feelings on both sides, but neither of them have the capacity to properly communicate it. And honestly, that's what aggravates me and hurts me more than anything. Because like I just want these two to be happy. I want these two to be happy. With all this in mind, this was probably why what they were doing was best for the time. Like they weren't really a couple. Like they more or less had a BDSM relationship. Blitz basically is a sex worker doing a job to fund his business. A very real situation that is a lot more true to life than a lot of people might think. And actually, while we're on that topic, I feel like this is also part of a problem that people have. Like, it's weird. As sexual as this series is, there's a lot of weird sex negativity within people in this fandom. I feel like part of it is because there's a lot of teenagers that are watching this that really shouldn't be, even though there's a fucking warning at the beginning, yet people want to still get mad at Viv as if it's her fault that people are watching. Like, I know some people also want to compare it to like when they were watching South Park or Family Guy as a kid, but like, Hello Boss isn't South Park or Family Guy. It's not raunchy for the sake of being raunchy. There's actual heart and story behind all of this. No offense that if you like that, but like, please recognize the difference. I'm just saying. Blitz is essentially a sex worker, like Angel Dust at Hazbin Hotel. But also think about something. How often is it in any piece of media that you see a sex worker that isn't used as some cautionary tale or as some joke? That is somebody that actively enjoys their job, that actively enjoys sex work. Like, the only thing that comes to mind to me is like Twink from Q-Force, and that's about it. Then again, a lot of y'all don't know that because many of you did not try to watch it. Also, side note, to the people that are fans of Q-Force like myself that have been trashing Hazbin Hotel and Hello Boss, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? Stop doing that. People say the same shit about both shows. What are you doing? But that episode, I feel like further reinforces many of my points, as well as just adding some extra details onto it. Blitz is trying to get Stolas in bed so he can get him to have makeup sex to try and mitigate slash fix the problem that's happening here. Further reinforcing something in my eyes. The main reason Blitz focuses on the sex is just because it's a lot easier than words. It was easy, it was simple, it was straightforward. They don't do words, they do sex. He even spells out that the main reason he hasn't apologized to anyone is because he let his own self-hatred get to him and keep him from doing so in the first place. Again, Blitz hates himself. You even see at the party later when he finally does apologize to Stolas after hearing the ballad that was basically a diss track towards him. He doesn't think that Stolas can actually care about an imp, or him in general. Blitz does not think that he deserves happiness because his past trauma has told him so repeatedly over and over again. So with what happened with Stolas, it's really no wonder that he couldn't believe that he could actually love him or care about him. Stolas wants that old school love. He wants that 90s rom-com type of love. He wants that putting up a boombox in the rain playing your favorite song while you're standing at the window kind of love. That's what he wants. That's what he sees it as. But also, like, that's part of the problem. Stolas, for how much he talks about how much he cares for Blitz and likes him, he's not really good to him all that much. In Apology 2, he does two things that I feel like really stand out. One is denying that he ever looked down on Blitz and comparing him to Stryker, both of which feed into the same point. Stolas has this casual racism and classism problem that he really needs to address that I feel like a lot of people don't seem to understand. For however much he says he likes Blitz, he's really bad at recognizing just how his actions and words affect other people. He's grown up in privilege for so long that he doesn't really see anything wrong with a lot of his actions. To him, that's just normal because he grew up around a bunch of people that were constantly doing the same thing. When you grow up with privilege, it's invisible to you. Yes, Stolas is stuck in a marriage with a woman he was forced to be with ever since he was 8 that has physically and emotionally abused him for years. He is traumatized. There is no denying that. But that trauma doesn't override your privilege or your flaws. It doesn't mean that you can't make mistakes. The fact that he resorts to comparing Blitz to Stryker when calling him out about this says a lot about how he never really thinks about his role in the relationship or just on a societal level in general. It gives a very rich white kid who never grew up around any black people, meeting them for the first time and mostly relying on stereotypes as his understanding without actually trying to talk to them kind of energy. That's what it is. Or rather, just not knowing anything about how race and class affects people's lives. You say you don't look down on Blitz, but you literally are so tall that you physically look down on everybody around you. Like, besides Blitz, he used his imp butler as a stress ball, nearly squeezing his eyes out of his fucking head. Moxie and Millie saved his life twice, including the time that Stryker kidnapped him. The time that he wants to say that Blitz couldn't even bother to come save him, as if it's supposed to be his job to do so. Even though he knows damn well it was because he was taking his daughter to a doctor's appointment. Like, it feels like the same excuse that everyone else tried to use when Western Energy came out, saying, well, why didn't he just reschedule it? He had been waiting for this shit for 5 years. Clearly, healthcare in hell is not good. It's in the sloth ring. It's clearly not good. Specifically, it's not really good for imps and hellhounds. For Stolas, he can get into the hospital, he can immediately get treatment, he can get the best that money can buy. We saw that at the end of the same episode. So in general, for him to say that, that's just out of line. And even with all that, how many times has Stolas referred to Blitz using the phrase little imp? Even when I was watching Circus and young Stolas said, is this an imp game? And yeah, I really did not like how that sounded. I did not like how that sounded. But also, I feel like that also just highlights kind-hearted people. If you're growing up in privilege, there are certain things that you're just going to adopt from the people around you, even if you don't mean to. For Stolas, race and class are just things that he doesn't have to think about. Even though he speaks about how much he likes Blitz and he would go out and show him off to other people, it gives a very Milo Yiannopoulos energy, some how can I be racist when I suck black dick energy, but that's what it gives. Even look at Ozzy's, when he's called out in front of everybody, he pulled his hand away as if he was embarrassed. Like, it was likely just a reflex because of everything that was happening so fast, but even then, actions speak louder than words. He's clearly never really thought about what their relationship means in terms of the public knowing. Like, I'm sure that there are people that will point out, like, what about Ozzy and B, considering they're both dating an imp and a hellhound respectively, but like, they're sins. They're rulers of hell. They can basically do whatever the hell they want, no pun intended. Like, the hierarchy of hell goes, like, there's Lucifer, Charlie, and Lilith up at the top, then there's the 7 deadly sins, then there's the Goetias. They're like the 3rd highest from the top. But they also care a lot about appearances. They like to act like they're better than everybody, but really they aren't. They're literally the guy in the meme biting his metal and spraying champagne all over the place while standing on the 3rd place spot on the podium. That's what they are. While Stolas isn't as bad as the other Garishas, he's a bit better than them. Considering how low the bar is, that's not really saying much. Again, casual racism and classism. He's not malicious, but he clearly still thinks a lot of these things on some level. It's a good thing that Blitz went around apologizing to all the people that he's hurt in his past, but he himself is still also owed an apology, specifically from Stolas, especially with how he handled things during full moon. And I acknowledge that Stolas didn't have his medication when he was doing this, and that definitely played a part in this, but I'd also argue that even if he did, that still would not have, the situation still would have gone the way that it did in the first place. Think about what Stolas is. He waited for Blitz to get there, dressed up in his royal regalia, which that was just not the right look for this, especially with what you were about to do, man. Seriously. Literally, you were sending the wrong message with what you're wearing, bruh. The first thing he does is he asks for the book back permanently, ignoring Blitz's pleas because Blitz clearly thinks that he did something wrong. Then Stolas comes out with the crystal, he tells him that their deal is over, that he doesn't have to come back to see him, but that he wants him to. Like, it comes off less as a proposal and more as a bribe. Thinking like if he gives something to help Blitz with his business, that it'll swoon him hard enough to stay with Stolas. Like, again, it's some romance novel shit. Though I will say, as bad as I think he handled this, I also kinda can't blame him for how he went about this in the first place. Not because I think it was the only way he could have done it. No. Like I said, he should have asked Blitz what he wanted. He should have actually talked to him. I more think about this because of the kind of situation that he grew up in. Think about this. Stolas has no good real life examples of what a proper romantic relationship should look like. Like, the closest thing he has is Paimon and Stella. Do I even need to say anything? What Stolas wants is the kind of love that he finds in his romance books. Like, in the beginning of Apology Tour, he's literally reading a romance novel. How am I sure that's what it is? The book he's reading is called Passion and Brimstone. Does that not sound like a romance novel to you? It's not really far-fetched to think that the guy who was forced into an arranged marriage, who never actually found love and recently had his gay awakening, would be into something like that. Stolas has an idea of love that I wouldn't say is naive or unrealistic, it just lacks nuance. He has a very love conquers all kind of mentality when it comes to romance. And that's a problem. He doesn't really meet Blitz where he is. He's the one who set up the book deal in the first place. Hell, he's the one who misinterpreted the whole situation back in the circus. He's literally had all the power in this relationship, financially, status-wise. Like, this was never balanced to begin with. Stolas says that he sees Blitz as an equal, and while that's a nice sentiment, actions speak louder than words, and many of his actions have said otherwise. The fact that he seriously thinks to ask when he has ever looked down on Blitz shows how he interprets his own actions. Put simply, Stolas put a proposal out there. When he didn't get the reaction he wanted, he ran off. He didn't listen to Blitz's perspective or hear him out. Like, he believes that love conquers all, but he doesn't realize that love is work. If you love somebody, you gotta be willing to listen to them, and you gotta be willing to meet them where they are. Not once in this conversation did it cross Stolas' mind to ask Blitz what he wanted. He didn't even try to talk to him, which, again, probably goes back to the closest examples of relationships he has being Stella and Paimon. Like, with examples like that, it's really no wonder how this ended up where it is in the first place. But again, that's still on him to fix. Blitz is doing his part. Stolas needs to do his now. Simply put, Stolas has problems on both sides, but the problems are different. Blitz's deal is that he hates himself and he doesn't think he deserves to be happy. Stolas' problem is that he hates his life and thinks that he deserves better. Those are two very different things that are going to need to be addressed by both of the parties involved in order for things to work out. Until then, well, you see where we are. There's many problems that Stolitz has that really need to be addressed. And after Apology Tour, at least Blitz is on the right track now. He's on the right path. Now we need Stolas to do the same thing. And just because I know there are going to be some people that mention this, like I said earlier, they were never really a couple. They had a working BDSM relationship, so the two of them hooking up with other people, it's not cheating. It's not. They weren't a couple in the first place. They weren't dating. Again, they had a working BDSM relationship. They were closer to friends with benefits than they were a couple. So Blitz shagging Chaz and X's and O's, not worth getting mad about. Or the joint bender that he went on where he made out with a bunch of people at Beelzebub's party. Same goes for Stolas at Barasika's party when he starts making out with some unnamed succubus. He's in the middle of his gay awakening, okay? Just let Stolas have a hoe phase. Let him do it. Anyway, that's my completish thoughts, and God, I've been recording all this for an hour. Jesus Christ. I actually started writing all this in like a Google Keep app. Where's my phone? I actually wrote all this down in like a Google Keep app at first, and then I hit a character limit, which I did not know there was a character limit on Google Keep. So there's like nearly 4,000 words worth of fucking thoughts here, and God, I don't think I've even written an essay this long, Jesus. But yeah, that's how I feel about this whole situation. Tell me what you think down below. I want to hear other people's thoughts about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out some of my other reaction videos. You want to check out Full Moon and the Apology reaction? They're right there on screen. Yeah, otherwise, I'll see y'all later. Goodbye.